In the year 2021, FC Barcelona earned $792 million. If we compare the earnings of other sports club or franchises, such as the Lakers, who earned $316 million in 2021, or a cricket franchise like the Mumbai Indians, who hardly made $116 million. Only 3 football clubs are in Forbes' list of the top 10 most valuable sports teams in the world. Yet football clubs dominate the sports world in terms of revenue per year. Out of the top 20 sports teams in terms of revenue per year, 15 of them are European top-flight football clubs. This video will demonstrate how European top-flight football clubs have dominated the sports sector and how they earn so much money. Broadcasting revenue. Football is the most popular sport on the planet, although the Americans refer to their interstate baseball championship as the World Series. But when the US played Portugal in the World Cup in 2014, over 24 million people tuned in to watch. That dwarfs the 15 million spectators who watched the World Series finale the year before, which demonstrated how many people in America alone like soccer. The most watched match of the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup in 2019 was India versus Pakistan, with 273 million viewers. The Super Bowl is watched by nearly 100 million Americans every year, which is incredible. Despite this, nearly 700 million people worldwide will watch Liverpool play Manchester United in a regular Premier League encounter. Then, that television rights are so hotly contested between the companies that can afford to bid for them. Of all the leagues in the world, the English top flight is the one most people want to watch and is therefore one that brings in the most money. In 2015, the Premier League received over $6.5 billion in broadcasting rights, compared to the roughly $1.3 billion paid to La Liga. The TV money is shared equally between clubs, so the $6.5 billion plus paid by BT Sport and Sky to cover the league from 2015 to 2019 was worth over $100 million per season to each club in the league. Any idea of trickle-down economics? It goes without saying, does not play out as you might like in the English Football League pyramid. The 72 teams in the second tier of English football were paid $250 million over 3 years from 2012 to 2015, which is a drop in the bucket compared to what the big boys are paid. As a result, there's no denying that there's a divide between the top clubs and the rest of the field. It's why, despite $93 million in parachute payments to try soften the pain, relegation can be a horrific experience for teams at the bottom of the Premier League. If there's already a gap between the Premier League and the divisions below it in the football pyramid, the distance between those in the Championship and those in the Champions League is significantly wider. The TV money in the English football is split evenly, but it isn't required in the Champions League because it's only available to those who compete in Europe's Premier Club Championship. It's why finishing in the top 4 of the Premier League is usually a fierce competition, with those who miss out paying the price. As an example of what we're talking about, Manchester City earned approximately $100 million from their Champions League exploits in the 2015 to 2016 season. That's a lot of money on their own. And it's even more impressive when you consider that about $55 million of it came from their television coverage. They did, after all, make it to the semi-finals, so they got a lot of screen time. They would have made less if they had been knocked out earlier. But you're still talking about $27 million or more from television alone. So when people say that television revenue is the most important source of cash for football clubs, they're not lying. Prize money. Football is a competitive industry when everything is said and done. A team can finish just above the relegation zone and receive a decent amount of money from television coverage, but it will earn less than the clubs above it. Why? Because you receive more money for each place you finish higher in the league standings. For example, in the Premier League, each rank higher up the table is worth $2.5 million to the football team. As an example, Watford might have finished anywhere between 7th and 18th in the Premier League as the 2016-17 season came to a close. Depending on their performance and the results of their opponents, the difference between the best and poorest positions would have been worth $22 million. Manchester United earned $2.3 million in prize money when they won the FA Cup in 2016, defeating Crystal Palace in the final. The Eagles, on the other hand, received half of that as a prize for coming second. It's why you frequently hear about a cup run being very profitable for a lesser team. Lincoln City, for example, was a non-league team in the 2016-17 season and advanced to the quarterfinals. They made roughly $500,000 on the run, plus any money from gate receipts and television coverage. That's also why smaller clubs might be so thirsty for a rematch against one of the bigger clubs. Player transfer. The transfer of a player is also neglected, although it can bring a football club a significant sum of money, because that money is frequently reinvested in other players. It isn't always considered part of a club's income, but less affluent teams can often be kept afloat thanks to a huge sum of money generated on a player's sale. Of course, Barcelona isn't one of the world's poorest clubs, but the $240 million transfer fee of Neymar to PSG undoubtedly helped to boost their finances in 2017. Smaller clubs can secure a reasonable return on their investment by adding a sell-on clause into the contract when a player joins a bigger club. Return to Liverpool for a moment. The Reds sold Raheem Sterling to Manchester City for about $53 million in 2015. Not bad for a young athlete who is skilled. The sly benefactors of the trade were Queen's Park Rangers, who had agreed a 20% sell-on fee with Liverpool when the Reds brought him from the London club years before. As a result, Liverpool only received around $42 million for him, with QPR taking roughly $11 million in the sum. Matchday revenue. Prior to the Premier League's reinvention of sport as a money-making beast, match days were the primary source of revenue for football clubs. This can be divided down into several different divisions, the most obvious of which is ticket sales. It's no surprise that clubs with large stadiums generate the most money because they can charge money to every single individual who enters the stadium on game day. Arsenal may not have had the recent success of Real Madrid and Barcelona, but they still make more money on a match day than both of the Spanish heavyweights. This is due to the Emirates Stadium's 60,000 seats and Premier League clubs demanding much higher ticket prices than their European competitors. Obviously, the more successful a team is in various tournaments, the simpler it will be for them to make money on the gate. If your team performs well in the FA Cup, League Cup, or European competition, for example, your ticket sale will rise. You'll also profit from the second key cash generator on match day: food and drink. Pies, hot dogs, beer, cups of tea, and matchday programs are all priced at the pleasure of the clubs. Obviously, the money generated from selling pies in comparison to the money earned from selling a player or a good cup run isn't much, but every little bit helps. Merchandise sells. Sportswear companies like Nike, Adidas, or Puma secure rich deals with the world's top football brands. But what does this mean for the clubs? When it comes to football star signings, the prospect of increased jersey sales is frequently mentioned as a financial gain. It's frequently advanced by certain fans as part of the argument for the transfer price or the often substantial compensation of the higher profile newcomer. When Cristiano Ronaldo joined Juventus back in 2018, it took only a week for Adidas to have to recreate Ronaldo's jerseys. The season's jerseys were totally sold out within 24 hours, with more than 500,000 Ronaldo jerseys sold in comparison to the 850,000 jerseys sold in previous season from the entire squad. Juventus jerseys cost around $130 on average. On the first day of the announcement that Ronaldo will join Juventus, the 520,000 Ronaldo jerseys sold produced a total revenue of nearly $68 million. Typically, the manufacturers, in this case Adidas, pay the clubs 10 to 15% of the sales. Juventus' stake is much higher if the jerseys are sold in their own fan store, at the stadium, or through their internet store. So only from the sale of Ronaldo's jersey, Juventus made between $7 and $10 million on the first day. Football kit sponsors. In football, even the tiniest amount of space is sold to advertisers. Fly Emirates, say the jersey, and Go to Rwanda, say the sleeves. Advertisements for telecoms can be found on shorts, socks, jackets, advertising boards, and even the sub bench. There are sponsors all over the place. As a result, it's clear that the clubs profit tremendously from sponsorship deals. Man United, for example, signed a sponsorship contract with TeamViewer through till 2026, which is worth over $300 million. In the same line, Arsenal has a partnership with Emirates, and Manchester City has a partnership with Etihad Airways. We're not going to go into every detail about football sponsorship arrangements because they're complicated. If you want to learn more, Athletic Interest has always created a video on the subject. These are the primary sources of revenue for most top-flight football clubs, and they're often more than in other nations due to European countries' higher living standards.